Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Rainbow Investing, where we examine a spectrum of ideas to increase your long-term wealth. Now, tonight I've got quite a special episode planned. It's something that's quite close to my heart, and I thought I'd map out what I think is an ideal financial roadmap for young people. I've been doing a bit of research about this over the last couple of weeks, and I thought I'd share what I kind of think about with you guys. So, just before we get started, give that like button a smash, and maybe if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, hit the subscribe button. It really helps me out being a small YouTube channel. With all that said, let's get right into it. Okay guys, so the first step I've thought of in this sort of roadmap is probably the most important one overall, and that is understanding your own money. Studies have shown that the vast majority of people live paycheck to paycheck, which means that money comes in and it's all gone before the next paycheck comes in. And most people can't even tell you where most of that money went. So the first step in this is actually understanding your own financial situation. A good way to start this is maybe having a look at a budget. Having a look at where your money comes in and where it goes out. So before we go any further, it's really important to have a think about your own financial situation and how much money you're spending and how much money you're saving. And also, if you're in debt, before you get any further with a financial plan, it's really important to make sure you're in control of any debts. And that doesn't really include any HECS debt or student loans, but it by God, it includes credit card debt, personal loans. So make sure you have a strategy to pay those off, and that's a really good start for your financial future. So there you go. First step is understanding your money and paying off debt, because really that's the most important step. Once you're on top of that, the rest will be a lot easier. So that's step number one. Okay guys, so step number two is maybe establishing a small investment portfolio. Now this doesn't have to be where you buy shares, getting straight into the share market, but maybe a small passive investing portfolio. I've made videos about passive investing before, and I think it's a really positive way to get started, and it's really not hard. You're almost guaranteed to make money in the long run. The reason why I put this in is because I think once you start investing, even if a large amount of time passes between investments, you'll get to understand the process more and see how it works for you. So think maybe after you've understood your finances, maybe start saving up some money, and once you've hit $5,000 or $10,000, it might take a while, but it's really worth the wait. Then maybe start thinking about a passive investing portfolio, or if you're feeling adventurous, maybe even some active investing. But I definitely recommend that everyone looks at a passive investing strategy as a first step in their financial journey after you've mastered your own personal finances. I've made a couple of videos about passive investing, so if you're curious about passive investing, go and check them out after this. I think this is a really important next step in your financial journey, is establishing a small investment portfolio. It doesn't have to be big, but as long as you dip your toes in the water, I think that'll be really beneficial for everyone. Alright guys, so step number three is one that everyone will be familiar with, and that is reaching for that house deposit. I've also done a video about the benefits of renting versus owning, which I think is an important consideration to make, but there's no doubt that buying your own house is a good move for your financial future, because if nothing else, it's actually a forced savings plan. Every week you're putting a little bit more money into an asset that will hopefully over the long term grow in value. And once you've paid that mortgage off, you'll have an asset that's worth several $100,000 hopefully. And if nothing else, that is definitely a positive step for your financial future. And one day, of course, when you pay off the mortgage, you'll be able to live for free. So that's of course a huge bonus. But I've put this investment step before the house deposit because I really think it's important, if you're really worried about your financial future, to think about investing early on, because I've talked about the power of compound interest before, and that really applies to investing in shares, even passively. In fact, especially passively. But I also think that getting that equity down for a house as soon as possible is a really important step if you're so inclined. Now this might be several years between step 2 and step 3, or even step 1 and step 2, but it's called a roadmap for a reason. I want to build a sort of vision that you can follow for a successful financial future. So I really think that getting that deposit down for a house is a really important first step. Now, maybe if you live and work in Sydney, it's going to be really hard to save up a deposit for the $1 million houses in Sydney. And that's fair enough, as long as you're thinking about it. If buying a house in Sydney isn't for you, then by all means continue building your share portfolio as long as you're investing in your future, because every dollar you put away now could be making you money itself without you working for the rest of your life. So I really think that steps 2 and 3 are goals that you should really implement as soon as possible, hopefully in your 20s. Because I know it doesn't seem like a big deal thinking about, when you're 40, 50 or 60, but trust me, I've spoken to so many people that age who wish they started investing in either one of those things earlier. Alright guys, so the last 2 steps I've put here you can really do at the same time, or you can do one before the other. It's really up to you because they're both very beneficial for your financial future. So let me explain why that is. So when you have a mortgage, obviously you have a loan on a house. Now the interest on that loan is not tax deductible. So if you borrow money for an investment property, the interest is tax deductible. But on your own home, the interest is unfortunately not tax deductible. So that means that it's really in your best interest to pay that off as soon as possible. You can look at various investment calculators on, say, a 30-year mortgage, and the amount of money you will save if you pay that mortgage off even 5 years earlier is really huge. Because really, if you have a 30-year mortgage, probably most of that mortgage is not going to be the cost of the house, it's going to be interest. And that's just really dead money that you're giving to probably one of the big banks. Now, I think that's a pretty terrible use of money. So I think paying off your mortgage is a really important step. Now, this is not easy, of course. Most mortgages are several $100,000, which obviously takes many years to pay off. But the way that a principal and interest loan works, which is what most mortgages are, is that if you make extra contributions, particularly in the first few years of your mortgage, you will save thousands and thousands of dollars over the lifetime of the loan. And once that mortgage is paid off, you can live rent-free. I mean, you don't have to pay anyone for your housing. And that's a huge step for your financial future because it frees up more money to expand your investments. Now, if you particularly enjoy investing, then by all means pay off your mortgage and expand your investments at the same time because they'll both give you a return if you know what you're doing. But with a mortgage, every dollar you pay is actually a guaranteed return on investment of whatever your mortgage interest rate is. So most mortgage interest rates are around 4% at the moment. So every dollar you put into paying off your mortgage that's extra is a guaranteed 4% return on that investment, which is a pretty good way to start. It's a lot better than you'd get in a high interest savings account. So if while you're doing step number 2, if you really get a taste for investing, you really like it, you like watching your money grow and make more money for you over time without you having to do any work, by all means start expanding that as well as paying off your mortgage. But either one of these options is a great investment in yourself and your family. And once you've fully paid off your mortgage, then you can really go ham on this last step, expanding your investments. You might want to put a lot more money into shares or your passive investment portfolio. You might want to buy a second property as an investment property. You might want to buy some precious metals. You might want to get into, art collecting or some other niche investment area. You might want to get into venture capital. There's an amazing range of things you can do with your money that will make you more money. You just have to really understand what you're doing. If understanding investments that you find really difficult, then you can passively invest. You're almost guaranteed to make a substantial profit over the long term if you invest in ETFs that follow markets. So here you have it, guys. This is my rough financial roadmap, particularly for young people. And I think if you follow these steps and try and get them done as quickly as possible, you're really setting yourself up to have a really successful financial future and maybe even an early retirement. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. If you've made it to the end, congratulations. And if you've got any questions or comments, just leave them in the comments section. I'd love to hear from you and get back to you. Maybe you don't agree with my plan. Maybe you think it's not a great idea. Let me know. I'm happy to listen. I'll have some more videos out soon. But for now, good night.